Hey everyone, it's Anne. As you know, we fund the show almost entirely with listener subscriptions, but I know not everyone has the room for that in their budget, or maybe you're feeling some subscription fatigue. But if you love the show, there are a couple things you can do to support us without spending any more. First, you can share it with a friend. You can post it on your Instagram story. You can email it to your mom. The other thing you can do is rate and review us in your podcast app. I don't think people really realize this, but those reviews go straight to Melody's inbox, and we'd love to see some reviews that don't say I'm a miserable professor or a pretentious asshole who is just using this podcast to talk to all of my friends. Basically, if you love this show, say so. Word of mouth helps us so much. Okay, thanks for listening, and on with the show.
TikTok is in such a weird flux moment right now that I feel like my For You page when I open TikTok feels a lot different than it did just a few months ago. First of all, I feel like everyone's kind of noticed this, that it's just the first 6 things you see feel like they're all ads or like TikTok shop. That's not the kind of content where I'm like, wow, this is exactly what I want to see, in the way that TikTok used to feel, where it was like, wow, I can't believe my For You page is so tailored to me.
Mine really changes because I have managed to create this interesting relationship with TikTok. I think because it's on the 3rd page of my phone screen, where I only really look at it like once a week. And oftentimes it's because I fall down a rabbit hole for a piece that I'm working on or for like a podcast or something like that. And so my page will dramatically change. So obviously when it was Bama Rush time, it was just all sorority content, so deep. And then I was doing all the Crown of Thorn and Roses. I always say it wrong. Court of Thorns and Roses content. And then there were so many fantasy memes and I like weird stuff too. I really love hoof carving videos, herding videos, the herding dogs where the they're sheep herding and the owner says one word and then the dog goes and herds an entire mountain of sheep, that sort of thing.
Yeah.
This is the Culture Study Podcast, and I'm Anne Helen Peterson.
I'm Katie Natopoulos. I'm a senior correspondent at Business Insider covering tech and culture.
I am so happy that you are here with us today because, seriously, when Melody was like, oh, we're getting all of these questions about, weird things on TikTok, who should we talk about? I was like, I know exactly who we should talk about it with.
I'm honored. Trust me, I am so thrilled to be here. When I saw your email, I was like, there is nothing on planet Earth that would make me more pleased than to do this.
Your beat, your beat has always been, to some extent, weird shit on the internet.
Yeah. I think so. And very often weird things on the internet are sort of tech stories because they involve, platforms and the ways that those platforms are shaping how weird things grow. Sometimes they're culture stories because they're, about the way that people exist. What can it show us about us?
Yeah. So you and I are the same age. I imagine in your peer group, you outside of media world, that you also have friends who are like, I only watch TikTok when it comes over into my reels, right? They feel like they're too old for it or that they're never going to get into it in some way.
I do feel a little like that has changed, at least for some of my friends, that something finally happened where, now everyone kind of is onto it. I mean, there are some weird user statistics that came out maybe, I feel like it was a Pew study from earlier this spring where it was actually the majority of TikTok users are now over 30. Something sort of, or maybe not even the majority, but it was people think of it as a Gen Z thing, but it really is more millennials and even Gen Xers are posting than it's skewing much older than it used to. It is no longer a teen app. It's an everyone app.
Is there a way that you can describe the difference in vibe between stuff that shows up on TikTok and stuff that people make specifically for Reels? So I'm not talking about reposting stuff. It's more stuff that people make for Reels. How would you differentiate those two?
Now, that is a question that I think about a lot because I personally have found myself reaching for Reels more than I have TikTok. I used to just love TikTok, watch it as much as humanly possible, or as much as
just like, a lot. Yeah, until you get to the point where it's like it gets like bottom of the barrel and they're serving you at things that like only 14 like, people have seen.
It was like my go-to time killer app. And I mean, I would spend a fair amount of time watching it during my workday because it, in my line of work, it was like relevant, right? Like that's probably not true for everyone. For a lot of people, there are like a lot of people who work in social media or advertising or marketing, and you kind of need to be up on these trends.
Yeah.
But I think it was a mix of like so much of the shop stuff. All of a sudden, it just felt really ad heavy. Like, also had almost like fine tuned itself with such granularity to be like, this is exactly what you're gonna like, Katie. And I was like, yes, it is. And then I would go over to Instagram Reels, which is like complete chaos because Instagram's algorithm is just not as good as the TikTok For You page in terms of, I think there's probably a supply and demand, supply issue too. Like there's just better content going on TikTok. But I used to sort of ignore Reels on Instagram just because it was mostly reposts of TikTok or whatever. And then something happened somewhat recently where like I just got into like a cringe loop, like where it was serving me like almost all like cringe content. And there are a bunch of these big...
Like what? Give an example.
Well, a lot of like super like Christian content, like really intense like Catholic content, a lot of like trad wife stuff, a lot of like hustle bro workout motivation. Like, I get a lot of, I'm pretty sure that official Andrew Tate is not allowed on Instagram anymore, but there are so many like offshoots of his, like they're basically these like fan tribute accounts that, post his content, even though he doesn't have an account. There is like an army of his fans that post his videos. And like, oh my God, like what is this? Like it's so far out there in terms of like, it's, it's pulling up the rock and looking at the bugs scurry around. I don't mean to call Andrew Tate fans bugs. I apologize to the Andrew Tate. I mean, like, I apologize to the vulnerable young men who listen to you. I don't think there's many Anne Helen Peterson fans who are like, I'm also really into Andrew Tate. For the record, I'm not really into Andrew Tate. But I get like a lot of his content.
And this like
I find it fascinating.
Just like you can look at the bugs and be like, what is going on here? But not be like, oh, and I freaking love the bugs.
Yeah.
Right? Like,
Right. Like, I'm not like, I want to be one of the bugs. But I mean, it's just all of a sudden a lot of content that is not made by people who are like me, either age-wise, demographically, different value systems. And I find that fascinating. Like, I enjoy seeing that kind of content that is made by people who have very different perspectives and come from different walks of life than I do. That's like a sort of charitable saying. I love to look at the weirdos.
And if you follow Katie on Instagram, she will repost some of these without comment. Just like, and I like when I watch them, I'm like, oh, like I'm shielding myself. But I get the most basic shit on Instagram. So I get the people who they've realized that the Instagram algorithm has turned against them in the way that they just post normal images. And so they make reels by using like whatever music is the top thing. And then like maybe just like a, 3 seconds of video and some words written on the video, and then everything that they want to say for the reel they actually just put in the caption. So it's like they're trying to get Instagram to pay attention to them again, which works, right? But it doesn't feel like its own thing. Do you know what I mean? Yeah, no, I feel like I do see a lot of that kind of content. I find it's a very annoying format of like, it's literally clickbait where it's like, someone standing in front of a river saying,
this one thing changed my entire life. And then like arrows down, click here to find out more. And I'm like, no, tell me what the thing is. I want to know.
No, and I've been getting like so much gardening content because I follow a lot of gardening accounts. And it's like, this is the secret to amazing hanging baskets. And then it has an arrow.
Yeah.
And you're like, expand it.
Tell me the secret.
No, and it's like, water them, like it's never like a revelation in any way. So I find that I'm frustrated with that. Okay, so I think we'll keep coming back to the differentiation between what's going on as we proceed through the conversation. But for today's episode, we asked listeners to submit TikTok trends they're seeing and they want an explainer on. So some of these I know you have like expertise in, and some of them we can speculate on. So the first one is a good way for us to talk about the TikTok algorithm just generally. And this comes from Susanna.
Not a question, but a comment about a weird FYP on TikTok. I started getting videos on Knife Talk, which involves these bizarre blade sport competitions where people have this machete-like knife that is apparently super sharp, and they run around cutting things like ropes, tennis balls, a series of water bottles all lined up where they blast off the lids in one swoop. I like to cook, but I have no idea why TikTok thinks I want to see this. That said, I kind of can't look away, which reiterates to me that TikTok somehow knows us better than we know ourselves.
I mean, clearly she's watching, right? She's seen a lot of these videos. So like TikTok's like, yeah, we got you. But what do you think? How does it work if you can explain to people who don't really get it? Like that if she was watching cooking stuff, that somehow it would serve her this.
I have two ideas, I guess. So one is that I do think there's a lot of what makes TikTok fun is there is a lot of this really weird niche hobby content that bubbles up. Yeah. And I think that like generally speaking, people like that stuff when they see it because for exactly the same reason she likes it. She's like, I don't know, this is weird. I've never seen this before. It's kind of fun to watch, like someone cutting open a tennis ball, like and I think there's tons of weird niche things that are like that. To be fair, I actually was searching for this the other day, but I was like watching a girl who just like does like chainsaw testing. but I was like, this is great content. My guess is that if I was, Mr. TikTok, which is, obviously it's not how it works or whatever. But I think the TikTok algorithm are like, they probably like part of it is that if you can imagine like you're making a potpourri of For You page and some of it's going to be like, this is tailored to exactly the kind of content that we already know you like very similar in terms of what kind of content it is. And then we'll sprinkle in weird little bits of like tester content to see, do you like this too? And I imagine that a lot of that weird niche hobby stuff kind of filters in as this tester content, right? So it's like, it's maybe not that you watch cooking stuff and use knives for cooking, but like, have you also watched something about somebody who knits, like, or not even hobby stuff, but just like, I think they probably flowed it into everybody's page a little bit. And I bet that a lot of it performs well overall. Like, I think one thing that works well is probably it's very visually pleasing, right? Like it's immediately interesting to watch like a knife doing actions. The other thing that I was thinking is that in this weird way, I do think there's an element where a lot of stuff on TikTok that seems new because we are seeing it on TikTok, it's secretly like kind of been bumbling around the internet in other forms for a long time. Like weird knife and sword stuff has been around YouTube since like the dawn of YouTube. Like I feel like there were like it was sort of very early viral videos where like guys taking their samurai swords and like being like, I'm going to use this katana to chop a pumpkin or whatever. Like I feel like there was a lot of that kind of stuff. There's just something about that that's like, I don't know, it's like funny, right? Someone just like taking a katana and going to town on a watermelon is funny. And it's like visually pleasing.
Of like a variety show, right? Yeah. Or like the way that like vaudeville worked or America's Funniest Home Videos. Like all of these historical forms where people either told weird stories or did weird things or captured weird moments. And then people really loved watching them. Yeah. Not new, right?
Yeah. I will say that I think that a format that does feel like a pioneered format, completely new to TikTok in a weird way, let me know if you think this, is the like people telling a story or something while they're putting on makeup or getting dressed or like, and I feel like there's this, it's not because they're just multitasking. It's meant to be like, I know it would be boring if you were just sitting here looking at my face. So I'm going to visually interest you with also watching a makeup application video, which might be boring if I wasn't also telling you a story about this wild thing that happened in my childhood. You know, so I feel like it's almost, there's another version of that that's like a split screen that might be like a clip from, you know, young Sheldon over like Subway Surfer video game or whatever, like that they multi-screen kind of stuff, because weirdly our brains are so craving input at all times that we need like ultimate visual stimulation.
I also think that part of the reason people do that is because it makes them less self-conscious while they are making the video. Yeah. Right. So and then you can tell the story with more ease because you're not just staring at yourself, or you're not thinking about like, what do I do with my face while I tell this story? And that ease also makes it easier for the viewer to watch it without feeling uncomfortable themselves. Whereas because most people aren't like you. They're not like, oh, I really want to feel uncomfortable while I watch this.
I think for the creators too. I mean, one of the earliest things I noticed about TikTok being different than Instagram, and I feel like this is a very like, I don't know, when did sort of like 2019 was when TikTok was maybe first taking off, right? Yep. Sort of, I mean, obviously the pandemic was when it really exploded. You know, the big difference being on Instagram, it's like everyone like looks nice. They have their hair done. Like you wouldn't post a makeup free picture on Instagram. But on TikTok, people were so willing to like look bad in a way that was in teenagers, and in a way that was like, I think really refreshing and really nice that like people post videos where they look like crap and like great, because that's how everyone looks when they wake up in their morning, right? And there is something sort of fun about like, you see people do the full process of like, here's what I look like before I do my makeup with, you know, my skin looks all blotchy and I have pimples, and, you know, and then you get to see the end and you're like, wow, now you look like you have a beautiful face. You know, I love makeup videos. Like they're fun transformation. Like I love a before and after.
It always makes me feel like I'm using way fewer products than anyone else in the world.
I don't know if you, I mean, as a person of similar age, I don't know if you feel like I do, where I feel like I've just completely lost the thread on how to do makeup now. Like, and I'm like, I don't want to be an old person who's like, I don't understand the new ways, but like, and like, I'm trying, like, I'll go to like Sephora and buy new stuff, but like, sometimes I watch these, I'm like, wait, we're not using the sponges anymore? We're back to the brushes? Like, what's going on?
This is a really good segue into our next question, which is about the way that younger generations use TikTok. This is from Kristen, and Melody's going to read it.
I've heard, and to be honest, I don't know if it's true, that the number one search tool used by Gen Z is TikTok. Example, instead of Googling how to boil an egg, a Gen Zer will watch a TikTok video that shows how to do it. This has deeply unsettled me. Am I just following in the tradition of generations before me and not understanding something fundamental about the changing way of the world? Or is there something worse or lost or ominous about this cultural shift?
Well, here's where I think we should talk about how bad search has become. Like how bad like Google search has become with so much junk on the internet. So, yeah. So what are your thoughts here?
I love this question because this is so right now of the moment where all of a sudden Google just announced this huge way that it is changing search, that it's going to be using AI answers for a lot of those questions, like how to change a air filter in my car or whatever. Yeah. That I think has made a lot of people really sort of radically think about like what even is search? What are we looking for here? Like what was the point of all these websites that existed that would answer this question? Like what is the web? What is search? What is the meaning of all this? I do think that already, like I've definitely found myself searching TikTok for those kind of things too, because often like a video answer is pretty good. And part of that, search had been quote unquote broken, partly because of all these giant incentives to make a bad web experience, right? Like if you wanted to know, how do I change a tire on my car? Like, you could find a million websites that would do it, that are loaded with ads, that are like the SEO challenge to do that, to like be the top site for that is like such a nightmare. Like, there's so many bad incentives created by Google that it like it was like bad. It was just everything went bad.
And that was all scraped from like lots of other sites anyway. So it was almost like a predecessor to this AI scraping. You know, I know a lot of people who do the Reddit before a question now. Like that's the other way. But do you find that search on like the videos on TikTok are better than the ones on YouTube? Because usually like the other day I was trying to figure out how to change the light bulb in the hood above my range. And I went on YouTube, not on TikTok.
So I would say it depends a little on the question. And I do think that this is a case where like being able to tell, should I use Google, YouTube, or TikTok to search for this is like a decision that you make based on years of experience of using the internet and knowing what forms of content you're most likely to find there, right? I feel like the advantage TikTok has over YouTube is that you're not going to get hit with a pre-roll ad. Like, you're going to immediately get a 30-second clip showing you how to do it, right?
Yeah.
YouTube, like a lot of times, especially looking for something that's like a how-to on YouTube, like you get like a full like preamble that's like a 20-minute like long thing before they give you like the little money shot of how to like replace the refrigerator light bulb, right? Like, it can be a really annoying experience. And part of that is because YouTube created these incentives where they said, you're only going to get paid if you make a video, if people watch for more than like 3 minutes or whatever, for longer videos. So all of a sudden these things were incentivized to make longer and longer videos, which made ultimately for a bad experience if you just want to know how to do a 30-second thing. Right. I feel like that's a case where TikTok actually really wins out. Like, you can visually scroll through them and tell which is going to be the video that looks like it has the right answer much faster than you can a web link, and tell, does this web link look like it's going to actually be from something reputable, something, you know, like if you were searching, how to do something or what to buy or whatever, like you can kind of tell just looking at some URLs, like, is this a garbage site or not? Again, this is knowledge you gain from years of understanding how the world works. But I do think that like TikTok is good for those, for like, it can give you a quick answer. And it's also really good if it's something that's like, you know, if you were like, catch me up on the latest pop culture, like what's going on with Hailey Bieber and Justin, that kind of thing.
Yeah.
Like that kind of like celebrity pop culture news stuff. I feel like that's really good for that stuff.
Right. Because if you Google that now, oh my God, like the
it's
garbage
a bad experience
that you get. Yeah, it's a really bad experience. That would be much better. Do you have any tips for using TikTok search?
I mean, it is a weird search, right? Like
it's a weird search.
The searches are weird. There's a whole, I don't know, weird thing around like the suggested searches, because you type in Hailey Bieber and you'll get an autocomplete for like, feud with Obama, and you're like, what? Feuding with Obama? Yeah. I feel like you end up, it leads you into strange searches that may be like inflammatory and strange, especially around that kind of stuff. But I don't know. I mean, like, it is honestly like, if you know kind of what you're hoping to find, I feel like it is sometimes like, it's easier to visually watch a 30-second video than it is to, I don't know, read an article or do a thing, or depending on what you're looking for. I think it's actually like a pretty good search for that reason. I don't hate the teens for this. Yeah.
I don't hate the teens at all.
And this is something.
Our next question is about a particular aesthetic, for lack of a better word, that's really popular. This is from Bella.
My question is, why are we fascinated with such boring things? Not just the ice restocking and the rug washing, which is kind of soothing to empty your tired brain. I mean, why are there so many viral TikToks about girlies and their morning routine, which is just wake up, skincare, gym, work, etc.? I feel like when I was growing up in the noughties, everyone aspired to be like Kate Moss or Alexa Chung, and now everyone just seems to aspire to be as nothing as possible. Is this part of leaning out or lying down flat? And is it bad that I just want to tell these girls to go out and get wasted or something, even though I know it's unhealthy? How did boring become the most comfortable thing? I feel like even the new quiet luxury fashion is boring.
Okay, Katie, what is going on here?
we know what this kind of content is. This is the clean girl aesthetic, right? Where it's like the Stanley cups and gym routines, and they're always putting a lot of different powders into their drinks in the mornings. I mean, like, I can see why that content's appealing, right? It's usually pretty well made. It's like quickly edited, which helps keep interest.
Yeah, so many cuts, right?
Yeah.
Like, it's just so many
It's like
cuts.
watching someone's entire day in like 25 seconds. Yeah, I'll watch that.
Yeah,
So
it's like a super cut.
Yeah, it's like a good piece of content from a like, this is visually interesting standpoint. Why does that appeal to us but it's I feel like this is a better question for you, Annie, is that like, what is it with the clean girl aesthetic that does feel so now?
Oh, well, okay. So there are people who I think are watching the content aspirationally. They're like, oh, my life's a mess. This person has it together. I want to watch that. It's soothing. When I get my shit together, my life's going to look like this, right?
Yeah.
But I think that the question from Bella is very like kids these days, in terms of, it's the same thing that I'm like, kids these days with their resumes, like, and their internships. Like, what we did after college was fuck around for a few years. Like, we worked crappy jobs and then we figured out what we wanted to do with our lives. And like, that's good for development. And I think there's part of me that even when we were in college, like, we would always razz on, there was like a group of girls who were already like in soccer mom mode when they were 20. And they would have been those like clean girls for sure.
Yeah.
And I think
part
there's
of it's just like the rise of wellness culture into
that's true.
Like, you don't have to be a like quote unquote, used to be wellness was really fringe, right? Now it's like normie to be like, I eat matcha and don't drink alcohol and do healthy things. Right.
Yeah. And I think that there's something psychologically interesting that happens when you watch, like, I follow this guy on Instagram who is constantly like deep cleaning his house and like steaming his sheets and doing like ASMR content of cleaning his bicycle and like all sorts, like, he's just like the most clean, chiseled person. And I watch it.
I feel like I've seen this. It's like I feel like he's teasing a little bit of Patrick Bateman, right?
Yes, he totally looks like Patrick Bateman. Yeah. And I watched that and I'm like, nice high rise. Like, that looks boring, so it makes me feel actually even better about my life. I'm like, I could do that and I would be so boring. So I think sometimes people watch this in a very straightforward, aspirational way, but I think most people are watching it oppositionally, if that makes sense.
I don't know. I feel like I see that content and I'm just like, good for you. I don't know. Like, I feel like it doesn't
live your life.
It doesn't move me, I guess, in a weird way of like, I don't aspire, nor do I hate. It feels so far removed from anything I would ever do in my life. Like, I'm just like, fascinating. I don't know. But it's so common and it's so, it is really pervasive. Is it boring? I don't know. Is it more boring than we used to be? I'm not sure it's more boring than we used to be.
No, I don't think so.
Yeah. I don't know.
Yeah. I think that like probably the people who are like making their lives seem that way are not as put together as they think they are. But I do think that it is an expression of this idea that like the fully optimized life is the desirable life. Yeah. But it's also empty. So yeah, that's our lesson. Is that's an empty experience. Okay, this is another question about a specific part of the TikTok experience, and this question comes from Melody, not our producer, a different Melody.
What might be the reason for the wonderfulness of TikTok comments? It used to be that the comment field was a place that you avoided because it was treacherous or boring, but on TikTok, it's often, not always of course, but often become a place of continued hilarity and of people riffing off one another.
Okay. Yeah, what are your thoughts on the comments? Because I think sometimes they're shitty, and then sometimes they are very funny.
So I literally just pitched a story and then like forgot to actually write it on this exact topic, which is how and why did the comments get so good? Like, historically, internet comments are garbage. Like, not even in a like they're just incoherent in a lot of places. Like they're literally of zero value. Like
there were
verging on
never any
spam.
good comments on BuzzFeed, right? Even like they did
No.
so much work trying to curate them and get rid of shit. But like,
Yeah, I mean, like occasionally, but like I feel like Instagram is a good example of like if you look on like a celebrity's Instagram, like the comments are always just like fire emoji, beautiful.
Yeah.
Like hello from Brazil. There's not much value there. There's not like engagement or conversation or like they're not funny. And like TikTok comments are so funny. It's so often that I watch a video and I actually purposely, even though the comments are hidden away, you have to tap to get into them. Whereas like on Instagram, they're right there. You're seeing them and I still don't want to look at them. But like I often go into the comments just to like see what people say. And you can tell that other people do because there's so often those things that are like, I broke my ankle running to these comments to see what and those are usually on like if the video is like really outrageous or whatever. But like, I am very curious of how TikTok, of all places, managed to sort of crack the comments. Like,
okay, so
make good
what
comments.
do you think? Do you think that this is related at all to the ways in which sometimes people respond? Like, it's very easy to respond to a comment with a video. Like, you can integrate the videos and elevate them in that way.
I think that's helpful. I think of this as this probably is a lot more of like a platform issue than you might think. It's not totally just a culture user issue. It's like TikTok figured out a really good way to design and like structure their comments to surface the best ones. I mean, you can tell that, right? Like the best comments get surfaced to the top, the lower ones, you know. Instagram does that too, but somehow like not as well.
Yeah.
And then what happens is I think that becomes a little bit of a flywheel, right? Like they created a really good comment user experience that encourages people to make high quality comments. And therefore it becomes a known thing of like comments are actually a worthwhile thing of looking at. Like instead of just, oh, that's a garbage piece that only exists. Like I feel like a lot of time comments only exist for the poster. They don't really exist for the other viewer. Like if I'm looking on someone's Instagram, I don't want to see what their comments say. Who cares? That's for the poster. It's not for me, the watcher. But on TikTok, I feel like it's different. The platform designed a really good product, and then the users changed behavior around that. But like, they are good. I don't know, and like people are funny. People make really good funny comments.
And the other thing is like, you know, people make funny comments for all sorts of reasons, but it also is a good feedback loop, right? Like it feels good for a lot of people to think that your comment is the best comment, like the funniest comment on a TikTok thing. So the other thing I would say is I think part of this larger understanding within the platform that there's a lot of dialogue happening all the time. And I think that the way that stitches work, right? Like underlines that this is a place where people are in conversation with one another. Yeah.
And I feel like my contribution here is a little bit hampered by the fact that like I am not a TikTok poster. I am only a TikTok watcher. So like I don't really know what the experience of receiving comments is like, you know. I'm sure that if you have a really viral post, you probably get a lot of shitty, mean comments that are just like any other place on the internet. Maybe TikTok is better than average at filtering those out. But as a viewer, that's not what I see. But that might just be because they get like shoved to the bottom or whatever.
Yeah. Yeah. I don't see those at all.
Yeah.
Okay. So we have a bunch of different trends that I feel like we could kind of do like quick hits with and see if you can explain them.
Okay.
So, all right. So the first one I alluded to previously. It comes from Ariel, and Melody's going to read it.
Has anyone else been getting and watching the hoof care or hoof trimming videos? I'm curious what led to their creation and popularity. Who else watches these? Is there some Venn diagram overlap between viewers of animal rescue videos and or pimple popping, etc.?
Okay, so if you've never watched a hoof care video, it's essentially, there's a name for people who do this work that I don't know.
A farrier.
Farrier.
Yes.
Ferrier. And they take the hooves of cattle, of horses, like, and they shave them. It's like getting your fingernails treated. And oftentimes there are places where like gravel or dirt or other objects have grown into the fingernail of the animal, the hoof. And so there's like pus, and it's incredibly related to pimple popping. And I think that is how you get served them in the first place. So I think it's pretty straightforward. And also, as you were talking about earlier, a cool hobby or a cool vocation.
Yeah. I think that hoof care videos are like almost the universal, like everybody gets served them. I feel like everyone I know has seen these. And I think they also do fit this niche of like, my guess, because you don't really see them on YouTube or
No.
I feel like that started for me. Pimple popping has been around for a long time, but the hoof stuff I feel like is sort of TikTok native, at least in its popularity. My guess has to be that there was one or two people who were like a professional farrier who started doing these videos and it caught on, and a couple more started doing it. And like yes, it's weird and niche. It's kind of like the lobsterman guy. I do think there's like a right, like one of the fun things about TikTok is that like you can be your crummy self who sits at home and you can see weird jobs that like are hands-on, you know, like the lobsterman guy, the farrier person, like the drain unclogger person.
Totally. So satisfying.
Yeah,
oh
like,
my God.
They're always shoving the tire through the drain. I love that. Like the you know, handsome Irish guy who herds sheep. I think that like weird jobs just do well on TikTok because it's like there's fun. I don't know.
Or even anything that has like a before and after.
Yes.
I love watching haircut videos.
Yeah.
Amazing.
Yeah.
You know, like anything that shows someone who is good at their job in some capacity, I think is very
I think
pleasing.
that the hoof also has this element of like it's better than just a pimple pop or an ear wax removal, because like you're like, well, the animal, like it's got an animal, like it's helping somebody, you know, like that they're always like, oh, this little guy is feeling so much relief now, and you're like, oh, it's you, his hoof is all better. I was worried about him.
Totally.
He was limping. You know, it's like it's feel good. You like feel good because an animal is saved. It's a little bit of like the dodo, you know.
And it's less that like I don't necessarily feel good unless there's like a giant cyst that someone has drained. That makes me feel good for that person. This one, I can't wait for your answer to this one. It's about a trend that transcends like any specific type of content. And this question comes from Olivia.
Why is it popular on TikTok or in other videos to tap your nails on whatever item you're showing off? For example, holding up the makeup bottle, tapping your nails on the side, holding up the jar of jam, tap, tap, tap. I assume maybe it's related to ASMR somehow, like maybe it just sounds more engaging to hear that tapping, or maybe it's just a chance to show off a nice manicure. I'm curious why this has become so ubiquitous.
So the reason, because do you have long nails right now? You have beautiful nails.
They're not so much.
In our friendship, you have had beautiful nails that
Why, thank you.
Click.
Right now,
click
they're
on
a little bare.
Click on the keyboard and also prevent you from typing without typos.
I do think that like long nails are more trendy than they ever have been, right? Fake nails. Acrylic tips, but it's like it's a spillover from there. Somebody there was just a good article about sort of exactly this, of this sort of spillover of ASMR tactics into a little bit of everything. I think it was in the New York Times. It was Madison Malone Kircher wrote about this. It used to be ASMR was this really niche, weird thing that was like, I'm going to do all these elaborate things. And now it's like a little bit of everything, like someone showing off the makeup, does a little bit of tapping or whatever. It's sort of, turns out people just like that stuff. I have a sort of a funny thing where I have a 7-year-old son who he's too young. He's in that weird age. He's in first grade. So he's like too young to really understand some of this stuff and has not been exposed to the primary sources of this content, but like is old enough that he's in school. He's around older kids. Like he absorbs some of that. Like he is sort of aware of things happening in the greater world, right? And so like the Stanley Cup trend, for example, has trickled down to him. He is aware, like I have a Stanley Cup mug and he is aware that that's like a cool thing. And he's like, some of the kids at school, like Rosemary has a Stanley. Like other kids have Stanleys. He's kind of jealous of this. And I was like, oh, I don't really use my Stanley cup. You can have it if you want. And he was like, oh, like so excited about this. And he would hold it up and he would do this. Cause now I'm going to show you, cause I have the Marshall's cheap version that I got for myself. Yeah. He would go. And like, I don't know how he knew about this, but like somehow he knew about people tapping their nails on a Stanley cup. Right. And I was like, how did this make it into your brain? But it did. It's just so ubiquitous that it's sort of everywhere. So it like, he was like, why do people do that? Why do people tap their nails, go like that? And I was like, it's just sort of satisfying. But he identified it as something you do specifically on a Stanley cup.
Just let him know that you could do it on your one from Marshall's as well. Okay, I'm going to skip to the last one. Melody, you think that's okay? Unless, Katie, you have strong feelings about bugs and parasite videos.
No, I have seen those, and they're fake, and I don't really know what they are other than they're supposed to make you feel sick.
Oh.
They're like, I've seen these. It's so disgusting. And once I see one, I get like stuck into a loop of them. It's like, it's usually someone, and I can't tell like where they live, like maybe India, maybe Southeast Asia. And like, it'll show like sometimes like a child, sometimes an adult with like all these, looks like bugs, but honestly, it looks like it's supposed to look like ticks on their back, but like in a giant formation, like literally covered, but they're not real. And so, but they're also like really colorful. Like they look like dried beans. Like what's the like subscription service of beans that people are really into?
Rancho Gordo. Yes.
Yeah. It looks like they've got like the full Rancho Gordo selection like on their back. And there's always like, they're sort of like moving and like someone's picking up. Like it's really weird. And it's clearly meant to be, watch this because it physically revolts you. Like it's that like tryptophobia. We used to like every like 6 months someone at BuzzFeed would do the post about the like looking at these holes makes you feel scared. Like it's meant to trigger that like gross feeling, but they're not real bugs. Like I don't know what's going on with that, but it's a very like weird, gross, clickbaity thing. But I've definitely come across them, and I hate thinking about them.
Well, you answered the question, so there we go. Okay, but our last question, and I know you're going to have some great thoughts on this, is another weird corner of the app that I always immediately go past. This question comes from Sarah, and Melody's going to read it.
Can you please explain what on earth is happening on TikTok Live? When I accidentally enter that realm, it can be truly bizarre. There are people, usually women dressed in costume, that are standing mostly still and seem to be making facial expressions on command. Or there's a lady that stares at the camera and pops one kernel of popcorn at a time on a hair straightener. I assume these are somehow generating revenue for the content creator. Can you please explain?
I feel like sometimes it's like, I'm like, is this a Twin Peaks? Like, are we in Twin Peaks right now? Like, that's what they make me feel like. So what's the incentive here?
I agree. Yeah. Like sometimes when I accidentally hit the live button in the corner, I feel like I've entered the portal to hell. Like, yeah. It's like, what?
Yes.
There is definitely financial incentive. Once you're in the live, people can essentially send you like tips, like micro payments. You buy like, a flower emoji. You buy like a pack of, emoji things. This is a behavior that's like kind of popular in streaming stuff like Twitch, which is not like something I use. It's also popular in like other countries. In China in particular, this kind of like live streaming with micropayment tips is very popular, which explains why it's in TikTok. But it's a little bit more, it feels like the live streaming from Twitch, if that's familiar. The fact that people do really weird stuff in there is like kind of to get your attention, right? Like, there was someone went really viral recently where it was, I can't remember her name. It's like Pinky something. But she would do these really weird, she had like sort of a name for it. It was like NPC simulation or whatever. She would pretend to sort of be almost like a non-playable character in a video game where you kind of do the repeated motions of like, hello, hello, But she was really good at doing them. And a lot of it was like, she was also like a beautiful young woman, which helps. And she would be wearing like sexy clothing. And then she would be like, ice cream's so good. That was the thing she would get. It was ice cream so good. Thank you. Ice cream so good. Like sort of on a repeat and a loop. And it's skill to that. But yeah, like she makes money from that. Like people tip her and send her micropayments. So there is like a weird financial incentive. I am always very disturbed similarly when I accidentally click into it. And I'm like, whatever this world is, it is not for me.
It feels too intimate to me.
Yeah.
Like the fact that it's happening right now, there's something about that simultaneity that makes me feel very uncomfortable. Yeah. I do think it's similar to forms of busking. Like, you know, the people who like stand very still like statues.
Yeah.
Like
no,
that.
It
and then like
definitely
get
is.
tips.
And then there's a little bit of like, sometimes I see there's this guy that I always see who's always like, he's making like flower. I think he does like, he's a florist maybe. And he's sort of like, he's always like talking to the camera and he's putting together giant flower bouquets. But I feel like it's maybe like they're paper flowers or something. Yeah. I feel like he's always on.
I would watch that.
Yeah.
That's it. That's the only
kind of fun.
Melody says it's good for watching the Eras tour live because people go live.
That's a good use of it. I think also part of it is that live streaming as a form of engagement is something that is more popular in other countries and other age demographics than probably we are in.
Yeah, we're like, one static photo makes me feel good.
Yeah, or like it's like for gamers or for like international, it's just popular in other countries. I don't know.
Yeah. Katie, where can people find you on the internet if they want to see your gross reels that make you feel uncomfortable?
If you want to see my gross reels, you can follow me on Instagram at Katie Natopoulos. I'm on other social platforms, X, Threads, Blue Sky, Katie Natopoulos. And you can read my articles on businessinsider.com.
Thank you so much. This has been a delight.
Thank you so much for having me.
I wasn't even uncomfortable. I didn't cringe at all.
Oh, I didn't make you uncomfortable?
No.
Well, guess what? I'm gonna now.
Today, paid subscribers are getting an Ask Anna Anything segment about best practices for moving in with a partner when you're an introvert. Great news. Melody and I are both introverts, so we have a lot of thoughts on this. So if you need advice too, head to culturestudypod.substack.com and become a paid subscriber. Thanks so much for listening to the Culture Study Podcast. Be sure to subscribe wherever you get your podcasts. We have so many great episodes in the works, and I promise you don't want to miss any of them. If you want to suggest a topic, ask a question about the culture that surrounds you, or submit a question for our subscriber-only advice time segment, go to our Google form at tinyurl.com/culturestudypod, or check the show notes for the link. Question: should we do more TikTok episodes? If so, keep sending in your weird questions and we'll see if we can get Katie back for another round. And if you want to support the show and get bonus content, head to culturestudypod.substack.com. It's just $5 a month or $50 a year, and you'll get ad-free episodes, an exclusive advice time segment, weekly discussion threads for each episode, and a link to a special Google form so that your questions go to the front of the line. The Culture Study Podcast is produced by me, Anne Helen Peterson, and Melody Rowell. Our music is by Ponnington Bear. You can find me on Instagram at Anne Helen Peterson, Melody at Melodious47, and the show at Culture Study Pod.